Welcome to Envision More. Here, we dig deep into the insights of first-generation wealth builders, unearthing stories of passion, resilience, and relentless vision. Your host is Wayne Wagner Jr., founder of Visionary Wealth Management. So sit back and dig in. It's time to envision more.
Hey, this is Wayne Wagner with another episode of the Envision More podcast. And we've got repeat visitors today. And they are two of our well, for me, it's three of my very, very favorite people. We've got Chris and Melissa Smith, and then my amazing bride, May Wagner, is joining us today. And Chris and Melissa have got a number of companies they run. Today, we're going to be talking about the family brand, which we had them on earlier this year in 2024 and had a great conversation about family brand. We're specifically going to be diving into kind of year-end planning, year beginning planning. How do we end well, begin well on the year with our families as we're raising kids? And for May and I, we're a little different stage. Our kids are adults now. And so how do we incorporate that? So Chris, Melissa, May, thank you so much for being with us here on the Envision More podcast. We're really looking forward to this discussion.
Pleasure. Thank you. Yeah, it's an honor to be here again.
Cool. Chris and Melissa, I know we were talking before we kind of hit play here on, when it comes to year-end planning, like how do we start? I mean, the Wagners, we started, like, we've just been fits and starts and we're getting a little bit more systematized today, and the kids are older. And so there's more stuff that we can dive into both individually and kind of corporately as a family. But it was really by accident that we got started doing some of this stuff. How did you guys start and kind of what does it look like? How's it evolved?
I would say ours has been a bit by accident as well. The evolution was first, Melissa came to me one year in like February, and she was like, hey, all those goals that you and I both set and all these goals we set for our family? And I was like, yeah. And she goes, and you know that it's like February and we're not following any of them? I was like, yeah. And she goes, and you know how we do that every single year? I was like, yeah. She's like, well, I don't want to do that anymore. It doesn't feel good to like, she's like, we're setting ourselves up for failure and we do it every single year. And so she was the one who actually came up with this idea of, what if we just chose individual words or themes that we wanted to embody for the year as an individual, and then did that as a family. And that alone made a huge difference for us. And we found ourselves actually becoming more and doing more by having kind of a North Star for a word or a theme. So we had been doing that for a while. Then one year, again, Melissa's always, the one I think who majority of the time has this brilliant intuition for our family. We wake up one morning on New Year's Day, obviously slept in because we'd stayed up way too late the night before. And she was like, I just don't love how I feel on New Year's Day most years. Like, I'm not starting my year off with like this momentum and this clarity. She's like, what if we do something different this upcoming next, 364 days from now? And so we decided that we were going to do something different. And we invited another family that is really great friends with us. And we still do this to this day with them. And Melissa had the idea of like, let's do a vision board party. And so we'll make a really nice meal. We'll dress up a little bit and we'll create vision boards, and I'll collect magazines throughout the year. We'll give everyone a big poster paper. And then she also had the idea of like, we also should do an awards night. Like like award ceremonies are fun. Like let's give people an award for how they've shown up. And she printed official certificates, but it wasn't like you were the most athletic or you scored the most points. It was like, you were the most brave, you were courageous, you were kind, it was like acknowledging who they were. So we did it our first year, and us and this other family were like, that is the most fun we have ever had on New Year's Eve. And then we woke up New Year's Day like, wow, like we already have a lot of momentum, like going into the new year. Like we know what our vision is for a family. We know what our theme is. We'd all gotten these awards. And then the next year we said, well, what if we also thought about a powerful way to bring the year to a close? But before I get anything you dad, before I jump into the bringing the year to a close.
Well, I do think that has come to be one of the most important parts, because it's easy to just jump into, okay, what are we going to do different this next year? And what does this look like? I've really loved the time to intentionally reflect on the last year. Like what are some of our biggest wins? What are some of our biggest challenges? And I think that is a really important piece of it too, that I think sometimes gets overlooked.
Yeah, so ours is just kind of in this evolution. We started coming with a word or a theme. Then we thought, what if we did New Year's different, just a different kind of party with vision boards and this award ceremony. And then Melissa was like, we ought to reflect on the year we've just had. And so the idea behind it has kind of been like, how do we bring the year we're currently into a really powerful close?
Yeah.
And then how do we jump into the year we're about to embrace with a really powerful start?
Yeah.
And
And it's almost, if you're bringing the year to a close, you're finalizing, you're kind of evaluating, how do we do this year? And that can also feed into the momentum and the energy and the motivation coming into the new year to say, hey, and it's, I'm sure it's not all wins. You come to the end of the year and say, hey, I got 63% of what I wanted to get done. I actually got done. I wanted to read 12 books. I read 4, and 4 is better than 0, but maybe I need to recalibrate and remotivate going into the new year. So that's powerful.
I also think, Wayne, we were actually a little reluctant when we first started doing okay, let's bring the year to a close. Mm-hmm. So Melissa and I would kind of interview each other. We'd go and talk with each of our kids. We were reluctant to bring up any of the hard things. It was all, hey, what did you like about this year? What worked? What did you do well? And then we realized there's some real wisdom in actually also saying, especially to give our kids a chance to say, these are the hardest things I faced this year. This was the hardest part of my year. These were some of my biggest letdowns or biggest setbacks. But you're right, Wayne. It's like, it's a combination of what really worked for me this year, what didn't work, that informs, well, who do I want to be and what do I want to do next year? And then we also ask, what do you think really worked for our family? What didn't work? So we ask it individually and then family. And then we ask each of our kids, what do you think our family could benefit from the most heading into the new year? Because coming out of the New Year's Eve party, we each want to have chosen our word or our theme for the year as an individual. And then we use all their responses and their feedback to collectively choose a word or a phrase as a family, and then a scripture that goes along with that. So we kind of present, hey, here's the 2 or 3 words or themes that you guys came up with, and then we kind of vote on one, and it's just really worked. Like, and it's fun because, like, even this year, we're in almost December now, and our theme for the year it's kind of a different one this year for us, but it was get that dog in you, because one of the things that we realized,
we have teenagers, and this was like definitely influenced.
But we realized last year, at the end of the year, a lot of us had like some really like tenacious goals around like our boys were like, I want to get bigger and stronger for sports. I want to lift weights. I want to and so it's like, well, we got to get all of us, like, we got to get that dog in us if we're going to, so.
Which means get that dog in you is, maybe it's self-explanatory, but in case it's not, it just means like, yeah, you got to get the hustle, and you have to have the drive and
hunger.
And the hunger.
Yeah. Scrappy.
But it's something we reference a lot throughout the year, and
and
then I have my word and Melissa has her word. But yeah, it's just been kind of and I just think it is fun, and it's fun to continue. But yeah, and I would also love to hear from you and May, like what some of the things you guys have done and are doing, because we're trying to learn all the time.
Well, I think that what's powerful about part of what you've just said is this idea of closure, but in the closure, you're being transparent about what's been hard, where's the struggle been, where's the hardship been. And I think I just had this conversation with a client today that I think one of the challenges is our kids can have this impression that mom and dad have everything figured out, that everything's perfect. And so when they face hardship in life, it feels abnormal because they go on social media and everybody and everything is perfect and works out exactly the way it's supposed to happen. You watch a TV show and a movie, and in in a 1-hour show, all of the problems are resolved. And so they live in this world where everything's supposed to be perfect. And when we can normalize failure, when we can normalize struggle, and we can normalize the normative evolution and existence for most people on earth is pain, struggle, and suffering. That's normal. And so we should really enjoy the highlights and the mountaintop moments, because those throughout a lifetime are going to be the exception, not the rule. And it's okay. It's okay to have to struggle. It's okay to fail. It's okay to have some pain or to have to overcome something. And when we can normalize that, we're building and developing grit and resilience and scrappiness and getting the dog in you. We're building and developing that in our kids and preparing them for real life and for success in life, because they will have to overcome. Right. So I think that's really powerful.
It reminds me of there is something that we love talking about is family narratives. What is the story that your family tells about themselves? What is the story that your children believe about who they are and who your family is? And there's different family narratives that people tell. Broadly, there's an ascending family narrative, which is our family had nothing and now we have everything. Our family had everything and now we have nothing. But the best family narrative to tell is what they call the research is called an oscillating family narrative, which is exactly as you're describing. It's like the ups and the downs and the ebb and the flow, and how that does build resilience and that does build identity in our kids and in our family, because they can see, oh yeah, mom and dad have done hard things, grandma and grandpa have done hard things, but they've overcome, and that creates the identity in them too. So you're spot on with that.
And I can do hard things too. Grandma and grandpa did hard things, and mom and dad did hard things, and I can do them too. And I can teach my own kids to do them. So yeah. May, we kind of got started by accident, but let's pivot a little bit, because some of our early attempts, the first couple were painful, because we're asking, 1 to 10, evaluate your relationship with each other person in the family. So you want to talk about some of that?
Yeah, so we had taken some time. One of the things that we try to do is get away, because we have so many distractions, and especially for me to get away and not have to deal with the day to day, to be able to focus on goal setting, it's very important. So we had gone to Florida, and we were shut up in this Airbnb with our two kids that I guess were, I don't know, 14 and 17, 15 and 18, somewhere in there. Maybe CJ had just started college, but
I think I think they were younger than that.
Yeah.
Bryce was middle school, because we were really struggling. We were struggling.
Yeah. So we were in a position where my relationship with Bryce was not the best. And it was just normal teenage stuff, or we were going through it. And so we went around and we evaluated our relationships with one another on a scale of 1 to 10. And I gave Bryce like a 4. And I think it kind of blindsided him a little bit. He was like, "What? Wow." And I was like, "Well, let me explain why it's a 4." And as we went through everything, he was able to relate and see what I was talking about. And that year, I would say, was turnaround for him, as far as always being focused on the other person in the relationship, not so much on himself. He had a very selfish mindset at the time. And I think it really helped turn him around. But it was eye-opening for us, just, relationship with CJ, relationship with Wayne, relationship with Bryce, to see where we stood. And then also be able to unpack it from one another. Well, when you say this, it makes me feel this. Or when I ask you to do this and it never happens, I feel disrespected, or, whatever it might be. And so those were all areas that we could start to work on. Became very beneficial. And I will say, as far as goal setting goes with the Wagner family, when we have this motto that we do big things. And sometimes I feel a little overwhelmed with the goal setting. Because I have a million distractions throughout the year. And so there are a lot of goals that I don't attain during the year. Like at the beginning of the year, I'm really good about making the goals. And then we do a lot of benchmarks with our goals. So we have relationship goals with friends, say outside of family members. We pick, say, 5 people who we want to invest more in that year, and we name them. And then we break down, well, how's that going to happen? Is it about, am I going to ask her to go to breakfast with me? Am I going to intentionally, help her with her kids, or help her with whatever she's doing, whatever's going on in her life, building a relationship? And the breaking down part of it sometimes is hard, because it requires more time, right? Relationships require time. And but I like the benchmark part of it. It really, helps our kids be able to say, well, here's my goal and here's where I'm going to start. How do I make it to that goal? And we do that with a lot of different areas: financial, self-development. Help me out, Wayne.
I think relational development too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
go ahead,
Can I
Chris.
say something to that, May? That's amazing. Is like, I want to borrow that idea of
I love
ranking. Like, hey, where are we at family relationships? But it also, like, I just think if more individuals, more couples, more families, more teams inside of companies built this muscle of we can talk.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, about what? About anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like, there isn't anything that we couldn't create or get through or overcome together if we can talk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Just so for you and Bryce to be able to say, like, yeah, this is like, it's on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 4 for me. And like that, like, muscle of being able to talk is like so beautiful. And that awareness of like, oh, like, because I think sometimes I think we judge people sometimes like, well, you should just know. It's like, well, I don't know, and sometimes you have to tell me to like, be like, whoa, I had no idea that's what was going on for you over there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to steal that. Like that's, and then I love that Melissa and I started doing this a few years ago, and we got the idea from someone else. I think we might've got it from Dan Martell and Dan and Renee. So Dan wrote a book called Buy Back Your Time, but Dan calls me one year in like November.
It was last year.
And he was like, well, because so we must have got it from someone else because we've been doing it for a few years, but not as intentionally as Dan. We would identify, like you said, May, a list of families that we wanted to do life with the next year, which has been really awesome. But Dan took it to another level. Dan calls me, and it was like in November, and he goes, hey, you have been identified as one of the families we want to do life with next year. Like, are you in? Like, basically, it was like a sales call.
Yeah.
Like, are you? Like, give me your word. Like, either you're in or you're out, or talk to Melissa, do whatever you got to do. Let us know if we can count on you. Because if not, we're going to go find another, we'll put someone else on the list.
Right.
And that was like really profound to me. And then to your point, May, he wasn't just like, I was like, after I got back to him and said, yeah, we're in. He wasn't just like, oh, okay, we'll get around to it. He goes, okay, well, let's get on a call with me, you, Renee, Melissa, and get our calendars out. And I was like, wow, that is like,
yeah,
it's just a really cool, like, because who doesn't want to get around other couples and other
who says
families?
no to that? No one says no to that.
Yeah.
That's good.
No, that's great. Yeah, and I think that the 1 to 10 evaluation has bled over into and evolved for us to now. We will regularly ask one another, just like in a normal week, I might ask the kids 4 or 5 times. Two questions, really: 1 to 10, how are you doing? And then 1 to 10, how are we doing? Because that gives us a quick, easy check-in the busyness of life, in the chaos that's going on, in all of the stuff that we've got going on, to be able to just say, hey, all right, hey, I've got to pause and reflect. How am I doing? And we also find that so Bryce, normal for him is 7.5. He's dating Morgan for a long time now, but Morgan comes in and her definition of okay is about 6. Well, if Bryce were at a 6, I would ask him a couple follow-up questions. But for Morgan, her answer is it's 6. And that's good. That's a pretty good number for her. Now we end up having some conversations to put some context around what do these things mean, because like at a 2, we're starting to put sharp knives away, and at a 1, we're probably calling in some professional help.
Yeah.
So let's put some context around these things. And have we ever had a 10? Is there a 10 day where where everything is awesome? So we have those conversations too, but it's given us a really neat check-in that we can do just in the path, in the course of life. So just when we just have a couple minutes together. So that's been
I love that.
So that's cool. No, that's great. So you guys do this on New Year's Eve, kind of on every New Year's Eve. This is the plan for the Smith family?
Yeah, so prior to New Year's Eve, because we do give out the awards and everything on New Year's Eve, and so we do those kind of reflection, that year-end reflection. We usually do that before, so that'll be happening usually that kind of weird week after Christmas, before New Year's.
Sure.
It's like something to put in there. where we do, I even give all the kids papers before they could read. I take each of the kids aside one at a time, and we'd have these conversations. Like I mentioned earlier, just reflecting on the past year, and then we take all of that information, Chris and I, and usually we'll have a little side meeting prior to our New Year's Eve award ceremony, New Year's Eve award ceremony, looking at, okay, what awards can we give this year? That's kind of something that we collaborate on, and then we do the award ceremony. And I like what you said earlier, May, about having a getaway. Also, our anniversary falls on January 5th.
Oh, nice.
And so it is so perfect for New Year's planning too. So usually we will have a couple of days where we try and get away and kind of formalize plans, like actual concrete calendaring and stuff after that.
Yeah, and it's also just fun too, so that like the week of, like Melissa said, we do the review, but then on New Year's Eve, we let the kids pick the meal, and we try to make like a really nice meal, sit down, but it's just fun too. Like, I think I don't know, I think there's something also tactile about the fact that kids these days don't know what a magazine is and don't know how to flip through things. So the fact that Melissa saves these magazines up through it, that's just fun. Like kids aren't on their phones looking at what it's like. They're flipping through magazines and, cutting out things that call to them. And then
I think we need to unpack that a little bit, because you've used that word, and I mean, we've had it. May and I have had a couple of vision boards over the years, but Melissa, can you spend a minute or two and just explain what is a vision board?
Yes. So we usually go into our vision boarding with those papers already filled out about, what are you looking, what are some goals you have for the next year, and the reflection. So they have a little bit of an idea of what might go on a vision board based on those questions that we've talked about and they've answered. But for the way we do our vision boards is I just buy them like a half sheet of poster board. And like Chris said, I've just saved up magazines the whole year. And sometimes it's a very intentional process where it's like, okay, I want to find a picture of a baseball because I want to try out for baseball and make the baseball team this year. And other times it's more, I actually had a mentor that this is how she did it, that I've kind of,
it's a cool story
that I've kind of fully embraced because I think it's really fun, is she's just much more intuitive. Like, she might have a few things that she intentionally puts on the board, but it's very intuitive. As she's flipping through the magazines, it's like, okay, what in this magazine is reaching out to me and calling to me? And she's cutting like those things out. So the story she shared with me is, I think she put an Eiffel Tower on her vision board one year with no intention of ever going to Paris or doing anything. But as the year progressed, she ended up finding herself at this masquerade party in Paris. And it was just this like crazy story that when she went back and looked at her vision board, she was like, oh my gosh, like that was there all along. And I think that's kind of fun, to seeing what does the universe maybe have in store for me that I'm not even aware of yet, or what does God have in store for me that isn't even on my radar yet, and letting it kind of speak to you that way.
That's actually been a really fun evolution. We should have brought our vision boards down, but I think, Wayne, the way we first used to approach it was very mechanical, which is fine. It's like, oh, I know that these are my goals next year. I know this is my word. So I'll cut things out of a magazine that align with that. Right. It was still great. And I think now it's been a combination, and it's kind of cool. And we've even encouraged our kids, like, hey, if there's something that calls to you in a magazine, you don't have to be able to explain it or know why it's calling to you to cut it out and put it on your vision board. And like, this was the first year I actually went into the vision board party that night not having my word selected. I had some ideas, and then all of a sudden I'm flipping through magazine and I'm like, grow. That's kind of a cool word. Another magazine, grow. Another, like, literally the word grow and growth is just like flying off the pages, and every, like, I'm like, I think my word for the year is grow.
Yeah.
And it's just been the perfect word for me. Like, our company's literally grown more than it's like I've, and then, my daughter Ivy loves to make these little backgrounds on each of our phones. Like, mine says grow. And so sometimes I think I would encourage people, if you've never created a vision board, you could have an idea of what you want it to be and some of the goals, but I would also say, like, be open to something that you might not be able to explain it. And it's just like, I don't know why, but this just kind of calls to me to put this scene or this destination or this word or this home on my vision board.
Yeah. Words like manifesting, come to mind, right? So, and that can be kind of ethereal, but it's also, I mean, it goes back to, you know, some of the old sayings of the best thinkers of our time, of Jim Rohn. You know, success is something you attract by the person you become. Well, you know, because as you become success, more success becomes attracted to you, and you know, somebody who can add value to the marketplace of ideas, and success comes to you because you've become someone who can add value, and that process. And there's almost hey, you know, once you buy the red car, then you drive around, you see all the red cars. You never saw red cars before, right? So
Totally.
but
Oh, and
yeah,
I love the name of your podcast. Always have Envision More, right? It's
Yeah.
like that's really what this vision. It's like it's helping you. And Melissa's been much better about this. I used to create my vision boards and then kind of like put it somewhere noticeable, but if it fell down or if it got lost throughout the year, and Melissa was like really front and center, very visible in our room, and I've started doing that more, and it's kind of like helps you like keep being reminded of what you've envisioned.
yeah. Well, like you said, there's something tactile about actually putting something together too, right? So spending time not on electronics, not on the computer, but actually tearing apart magazine pictures. And I mean, the last time I did a real, I mean, May and I guess May, we had the one with the house that we had the
Okay, that
plans
was my
for.
vision board. So when
Yeah.
was the last time you did
Okay.
one?
Okay. All right. You're right. That you put that one together. Um, I did one when I was drafting my mission statement for life of the man I wanted to be at 50 years old. And it was pictures of a 50-year-old guy with a little gray hair on the sides, and he was much thinner and more fit than I am. But you know, you could tell that he had just an air of confidence and competence about him, and he carried influence everywhere he went. And you know, it was pictures of that guy and his life, and in kind of we were doing it in kind of a 3-ring binder in the plastic, the little plastic folders. But I was with one of my first coaching programs. You
That's
know,
awesome.
forced me to do that. But that vision, that statement, that mission statement stays with me to this day, and
Awesome.
it's still on the tip of my tongue. So, yeah. So these things, and our kids get shaped by this stuff over time, right? So as we normalize I mean, when we were going through the family brand curriculum, and it was hard to get our kids, you know, just to get everybody in the same room together, right? It was difficult, but our now son-in-law Jacob was sitting in on it, and you know, we're having some conversations, and Bryce and CJ they're there, they're processing, but they're also a little bit like, Mom and Dad, you know, I know this is like, it's a good exercise. We're articulating some of these things and coming up together with some agreed upon language. But frankly, like, this is muscle memory for us. Like, this is how we function as Wagners, because this is how we've always functioned as Wagners. And so, you know, it's maybe not as dynamic as, you know, because we're just, you know, we know who we are and how we're supposed to show up because we've been doing this together for a long time. And Jacob stepped in and he was like, "Hey guys, like, this is like super, super valuable for me. Like, I didn't know this was a thing. I didn't know this was possible." And, you know, and so that's prompted other conversations down, you know, and now CJ and Jacob this year will be doing this on their own as a new couple, and preparing as a couple to come to join May and I and Bryson Morgan to do this. So
awesome.
And it's been fun because we, as the kids have gotten older, they're responsible for putting together their budget for the year. And so we spend, you know, this year we'll spend 3 sessions of 2 hours each. I'll have the curriculum out to everybody by the first week in December. So I got to finish that up, you know, this Thanksgiving weekend, and get that out to everybody. But, you know, they're responsible for putting together their budget for the year, responsible for putting together their net worth statement, and the different assets they own, and how they expect those assets to appreciate or depreciate over the, you know, if you own a car, is that going to be worth more a year from now or less a year from now? And so how will your net worth change over the next year based on that? What areas are you saving? How are you saving and accumulating money? How are you, that kind of stuff. So that as the kids have matriculated into, adulthood at this stage, the conversations get bigger and more varied, not less. So it's,
that part has been very helpful. I know we had an instance this last summer where Bryce was pretty much feeling the weight of running the Annie Ann's or the Annie Ann's. And he just felt like, I'm putting all this work in and I'm not getting paid that much. And it really, truly stinks. And so we were able to sit down with him and say, okay, let's just take the 10,000 foot view. Let's look at everything. You have a percentage stake in this and you have this and that. And by the end of the day, he goes, all right, I'm doing all right. So it helps him to be able to take the 10,000 foot view. What is my net worth? Am I improving upon that? Even though I feel cash poor at some times. So yeah, that was good.
Yeah.
I love that you guys do that with your kids. Like,
yeah, what a great exercise. So valuable.
and it's so funny. You said something, Wayne, I think maybe it was your son-in-law that was like, I didn't even know this was possible.
No.
I didn't know. Yeah. I didn't know you could do things like this in a family. I didn't know families did things like this. And that's what's so interesting. It's like, and I don't mean this from a judgmental perspective, but it's just like, yeah, why don't we do things like this as a family? And why don't we think it's possible? Like these things that, I don't know many companies that don't do some sort of year-end planning for their company, think about their for the next year, talk about budget, it's just good business practices.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, well, hey, you could do that as a family. Like the first time we had the thought of like, well, we don't have to go to a New Year's Eve party every year. It's like, oh, you don't? It's like, no, we could do our own thing. It's just seeing these things that are possible in families, I think is just really awesome. And I think it's cool to share this story that you guys are sharing. And because I think it helps other families see like, oh, more is possible. We can kind of take back our family and do more than maybe what we've been taught.
It does invoke this team feeling that we're all on the same team. I know what your goals are. You know what my goals are. We're helping each other reach our goals. And that instills a level of communication that many families, I think, truly miss out on. When tough things happen, when failures happen, the communication is still there because we've talked through, all of our goals and what we, want for the year. And when things fall through, there's still that level of communication and support. And I think that families don't get started with goal planning because they don't want to take the time to committing and investing in the communication and relationship part.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, and we frequently are trying to protect our own identity, our own idol of our own self-image, right? I don't want to be critiqued or held accountable.
Yeah.
And when we invite accountability and when we invite vulnerability, one of the things, I when we talk about family brand with other people, we talk about how having shared core values invites accountability within the family without accusation. It's not a, hey, why are you doing that? What's wrong with you? It's a, hey, we're Wagners. We've agreed that this is how we show up. And that, and that enables us to, Bryce and I have had a couple of hard conversations this year, where he's come back and I've asked him a direct question. He hasn't told me the truth. And then he's come back to me and said, I don't want to be somebody who doesn't tell the truth. And he's told me the truth. And when we dug into it, he said, I asked him, well, why did you feel like you couldn't tell me the truth up front? And he said, well, I was afraid of how you'd react. And I said, yeah, but Bryce, we're Wagners. We can talk about anything without judgment. I think we stole that from the Smith family.
I love that. That's
blatantly. And we're Wagners. We can talk. And so you never have to be afraid of a reaction from me. There might be consequences if you've done something that there are consequences for, but that, today with the decisions you're going to be making, it's far more likely that a consequence is going to be the police are going to be involved in something that dad's going to blow up. And so, but that it's creating that accountability. It's inviting accountability. It's inviting the communication around it, and creating a safe place. I mean, for all of the conversations in our culture today about safe places or safe spaces, the fact of the matter is we need safety to have hard conversations.
Mm-hmm.
And there needs to be emotional safety, physical safety, obviously, but we and for us, it invites the ability of shared vision. And for us, it's for the Wagners, it's, hey, we're entrepreneurs, or we think and function as entrepreneurs. Why do we do that? Well, we do that because we want to raise a orchard full of businesses, much like an apple farmer would raise an orchard of apple trees, for the purpose of being able to harvest that harvest in season, and be able to live generously because of its fruit. And that's why we do this. That's why it's not to get rich. And we've got one of the things we're working through this year is our list of why are we entrepreneurs, and the first 5 or 6 things have nothing to do with getting rich. It's all about, we're entrepreneurs so we can take back our time. We're entrepreneurs so that we can create opportunities for our staff and give them the dignity of good work and working in an environment where they're respected. So it's all these things that have nothing to do with getting with money per se. And we want to be able to cast that vision and invite our kids along in that process. Anyway.
Well, there's something you said, Wayne, that I think is really profound, and it's this word shared. And I don't know that we've done the best job at Family Brand of talking about that enough. And we actually just refilmed all of the curriculum for the Family Brand Academy, and we feel like upgraded it, and we are talking about it way more there. I talk a lot about it at the Possibility Company, but I'm realizing there's an opportunity to talk about it more. And so we talk about this idea of having a shared identity, shared language, and shared experiences. Yeah. But the key word really is shared. It's not like mom and dad's identity or one person's identity. It's there's a shared identity of who we are as the Wagners. Mm-hmm. And there's still room in that for everyone to have their own unique identity. So there's a shared identity of our vision. Mm-hmm. There's a shared language of these values. But then I think we also really underestimate the power of shared experiences, big and small, that our kids can come to count on. And I know that Melissa's done a lot of research on the research of the power of traditions and rituals and rhythms and cadences. So a shared experience for our family could be, hey, we eat dinner together. Maybe not every night, but that's a shared experience. But then sometimes we have these bigger shared experiences, like you guys do this really powerful budgeting with that's a shared experience, And I also think it's just interesting for us to look at as families. Okay, do we have a shared identity? Even if it's one line simple statement, do we have some shared language around a couple of values? And do we have some shared experiences that we know we can count on? Because there's a lot of things in the world you can't count on, but to know I know I can count on my family. I know I can count on this. I know, and I hope my kids feel like this the rest of their lives. I know that for the rest of my parents' lives, I could show up on New Year's Eve and my parents are going to be doing the New Year's Eve vision board party, or whatever that is. It's just a shared experience.
And I think a lot of times when we think about traditions or shared experiences, we think about those big annual ones. But I love that you included family mealtime or Sunday dinners or some of those smaller ones that are happening more frequently that almost seem like an afterthought. Those are some of the most powerful ones.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Well, one of our shared values as Wagners is we value experiences over things. And so May, do you want to talk about maybe this past weekend and Saturday night we went out with the kids to see Daniel at Sight and Sound, and then 2 days later CJ had a really powerful experience with a friend.
Yeah, so we went and saw Daniel at Sight and Sound in Lancaster, and there was many messages that kind of really hit home for our kids. We came away from that experience. We had dinner afterwards, and we just talked about the life of Daniel. And so one of the things that was said throughout that play was that that God holds your breath in his hands. And so over the weekend, CJ's best friend lost an uncle, very close uncle, who was a Christian. And she called CJ up sobbing on Sunday and was asking the question of how would God allow someone to pass away early like that? Why would that happen? And, CJ was able to turn around and share with her friend, that's because God holds your breath in his hand. To be here, is only of his doing. And it really hit home. And I'm probably not telling the story as well as CJ could tell it. But, the providence of God that we were able to be together as a family. I bought the tickets like 8 months ago and planned that weekend before Thanksgiving for us all to go see this theatrical production. And then for this to happen next, CJ sent us this email and she said, thank you so much for being intentional with your time, with planning things for us to be together and for us to also grow. And she goes, if it wasn't for this weekend, I wouldn't have had the words for my friend. And so it's exciting to see God work through your intentionality. So you want to add anything to that, Wayne?
No, that's powerfully put, May. I think that the only thing I would add would be that it's so, we do these things, we try to be intentional, but you don't know when the moments are going to come. And what my response to CJ was, we put in the work, we read the books, we listen to the podcast, we take in the content, we work on ourselves, we have these conversations, and really what we're doing most of the time is developing ourselves, because to be there, to be the one who can add value to somebody who's at a very vulnerable or very weak moment, and somebody who needs an answer, needs a solution, needs a different perspective. And, we put in the work so that we can add value in those moments. And, it's powerful to see it kind of happen quite so tightly together. Hey, we saw a play together, had a couple conversations after dinner or at dinner the night before. And then the next day, God's kind of putting it to work in action.
Yeah.
That's kind of a really small vignette, tight window, but it's powerful.
It's amazing. And it is a testament to, like you said, being intentional with your time and creating experiences, because they're not just going to happen. That's another thing. It's like in the craziness of the world we live in today and how busy and fast paced, I think we have great intentions of being close as a family. We have great intentions of having these shared experiences, but like you looked out 8 months ahead, got it in the calendar. And I think most families have really good intentions about creating these shared experiences, but it's the execution of like blocking it in the calendar, buying tickets, like whatever it is. So it's amazing.
Great. Well, hey, we're up against our backdrop, our time here. Chris and Melissa, thank you so much for being here. We can't recommend Family Brand and the curriculum and the work that you guys have put in there enough. We talk about Family Brand 3 or 4 times a week with people outside of our family. So it's a powerful curriculum that we can't recommend enough. And we want to see more families and encourage more families to do that kind of work. And here, this has been an amazing time, just reflecting on kind of not just starting the year well, but as Melissa has pointed out so strongly, closing the year really well and making sure that we reflect back before we look forward. So the optimist of Wayne Wagner is always kind of looking forward. What's next? But I need to be kind of hit pause, reined in a little bit. Hey, let's look back. Let's figure out, as my coach, Trent Booth, you need to journal more, Wayne, you need to write more. So collect the lessons. But thank you so much for being here on another episode of the Envision More podcast.
Can I, before we close, anything that I referenced as far as like sheets that I hand my kids or like the process that we follow, I give that away for free on our website. If anyone listening would like to have access and maybe wants to do this or wants to do something but doesn't know where to start, this would be a really great place to start. So if you go to familybrand.com/best, as in the best year ever, you can find, again, a free download for all of that. It will make it a little bit easier to do for your family.
That's amazing. And we'll make sure that's in the notes for this podcast episode as well.
And you mentioned Jim Rohn, and I just want to say, he says, fail to plan to fail. And I definitely don't want to fail. So.
Amen. Well, thank you again for having us
you.
on a second time. We always love being with you guys.
Yeah. We'll look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Envision More podcast with Wayne Wagner Jr. of Visionary Wealth Management. We hope you were encouraged and inspired by the conversation today. If you want to dig deeper into the show notes or Wayne's work at Visionary, you can find us at envisionmore.com. That's Envision with a Z. Advisory services are provided through Wealth Plan Investment Management. Wealth Plan Investment Management and Visionary Wealth Management are separate entities. The content is developed from sources believed to be providing accurate information. The information in this material is not intended as tax or legal advice. Please consult legal or tax professionals for specific information regarding your individual situation. The opinions and material provided are for general information and should not be considered a solicitation for the purchase or sale of any security. Thanks for listening.